Hello, my name is Molly Hayes. I'm the chair of the Leawood Chambers Legislative Affairs Task Force. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Johnson County Public Policy Council's Candidate Forum for Kansas House District 20. Today's forum is co-hosted by the Overland Park Chamber, and joining me are Jane Dirks, the Republican candidate, and Mari-Lynn Poskin, the Democrat candidate. The Johnson County Public Policy Council is comprised of the 10 chambers of commerce serving Johnson County. They developed today's questions focusing on business and community issues. We will start with brief opening statements for up to 2 minutes for each candidate. Kevin Jeffries is serving as our timekeeper today and will hold up those signs. And at the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Because of time constraints of the format, we will not have questions from the audience. We will alternate which candidate answers first, and before we went live, we conducted a coin toss to see who would start. So I'll ask Jane Dirks to start with her opening statement.
Good morning. Again, like she said, my name is Jane Dirks, and I just appreciate the opportunity to visit with all of you, both chambers doing this. It's just a wonderful opportunity to have to talk to constituents. Just a little background on me. I was raised in Kansas, and my husband and I have raised all of our 4 children in Kansas here in Overland Park. We've lived in the 20th district for 20 years, and I've been a precinct committee person, and I've also served on roles on boards, as well as been very active in the education field. Both of my husband and my son are small business owners, so that's very important to me. And I'm just really excited about getting the chance to serve all Kansans.
Thank you, Jane. Now we'll turn to Mari-Lynn for her opening statement.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to all 3 of the chambers, the Leawood, Overland Park, and Greater Kansas City chambers for hosting this today. I look forward to working with you all to make sure that our business climate in Kansas continues to bring in new businesses and be successful for everyone. I'm Mari-Lynn Poskin, running for the Kansas House. Oh, I forgot to thank Jane for coming. We're both at that stage as new candidates where we know what we signed up for now. So thank you for coming as well today. I am Mari-Lynn Poskin, running for the Kansas House here in District 20. I'm a Kansan by choice. I grew up in a military family where we lived all over, and in my early adulthood, moved corporately. And at one point, basically after 9/11, I decided that I needed to give my children roots and could choose from any place in the entire country. And when doing so, I landed on Overland Park. And I did that because of our outstanding schools, the fantastic quality of life, our healthy and strong communities, which I also would thank the chambers here for. We're always on the list for the best places to live. And as well, I was brought here by our economic development opportunities for our family. My former husband was on the opening team of the Overland Park Convention Center. My husband, David, and I have 7 children. That gives us 90 years of K-12 education experience, and 62 of those are right here in Johnson County. I am a small business owner myself. I advise families through the college admissions process, and have worked also on various boards, been a 20-year higher education professional working at Johnson County Community College. And I want to make sure that all of those things that brought me to Kansas, our outstanding public schools, our strong and healthy communities, and our vibrant economic climate remain the hallmark of the Sunflower State for the future, for my 7 kids, my grandkids, and all the kids of Kansas. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now we'll proceed with Q&A, and I'll start with the first question. And Mari-Lynn, you'll answer first. As a candidate, what are your top 3 public policy issues?
So when I was asked to run in February of 2019, I looked very carefully at that, knowing that we would need a top 3 platform. And I landed on exactly those things I just mentioned that brought me to Kansas: our outstanding public education system, our strong and healthy communities, and a vibrant economic climate for the state of Kansas. Those will come those have remained my focus since 2019. They will come with an overlay of COVID though. That still makes them the top priorities, but we are going to have to address them and make sure that we've got to contain the virus first and foremost. We've got to contain the virus and then make sure that we restore economic and consumer confidence. And so those are the 3 policy issues that I will focus on.
Thank you. And Jane, now your turn. The top 3 policy issues.
Yes, I have a lot of the same ones that Mari-Lynn has. I especially would like to focus on lowering the tax burden on families and seniors. I know especially with property taxes, that has been a concern with a lot of people as I walk door to door. I also would like to focus on healthcare access and affordability. I would like to see more options in that so that people can pick a healthcare plan that works best for them and their family. And I also want to continue to focus on student-focused education. I see a lot of issues there where we're not actually focusing on the students and the teachers. And so I really want to make sure that all students continue to get the quality of education that we've offered here in the Blue Valley and Shawnee Mission districts, and to continue to find ways to make that even better. And I think that if we do those things, then it'll just keep our community strong and vibrant and bring in new businesses.
Thank you both. The next question, how would you propose to balance the state budget? What specific budget cuts would you support and revenue enhancements would you consider, if any? And we'll start with Jane.
I think it's really interesting figuring out how to manage all of this with the COVID issues and just how much that has affected our economy. So one of the first things I would like to do is I would like to go by zero-based budgeting, where we evaluate each program on an annual basis and find out just what each program really needs. Then I would base any increase on the rate of inflation and population growth. That is how I would like to focus, and I would prefer no tax increases.
Thank you. And Mari-Lynn, your turn. How would you propose to balance the state budget? What specific budget cuts would you support, and what revenue enhancements would you consider, if any?
You bet. And again, we will have the extra challenge of COVID. We always have to balance our state budget. And we need to do that not on the backs of families and without doing it to the detriment of the business community. In terms of cuts, we are not operating on a lot of fat in our state budget due to the previous administration's failed brown bag tax experiment. And we are seeing the results of that in our inability to serve our families in the neediest times with our Department of Labor operating on a 40-year-old computer system. So in terms of cuts, I think we're going to have a difficult time coming up with that. One thing I can see is definitely not making any cuts to public education, but we can stop the siphoning of public tax dollars to subsidizing private education. That is not a responsibility of the state legislature, so that is a cut I could see immediately taking. In terms of revenue, we have had some good news. On October 1st, we noticed that our sales taxes and our revenue was up. And I would like to focus on the compensating use taxes. That's where some of our best successes have been. We could also look at potential sports betting, and it's probably time for the state to look at medicinal cannabis. And as well, with our economic development successes, some of our bases are going to be increased.
Thank you. The next question, what would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce? Mari-Lynn?
That's critical, and our industries are facing shortages of qualified workers. So one of the things we have to do is keep our focus on the K through 12 education public system so that when our high school graduates enter the workforce, they are prepared. We have some great public-private partnerships on that. I worked for 9 years at Johnson County Community College, and our dual credit system is fantastic for that. A lot of our students are graduating from high school with associate degrees or with a very, through the career pathways, they're graduating well on the road to a career. The public-private partnership I'd like to highlight is between the Regents and the Commerce Department, the Workforce Aid, where AID stands for Aligned with Industry Demands. That is fantastic. With the partnership, people can get trained in 8 weeks and often for free, and it meets their demands from our industry specifically. We need to create a welcoming environment so that we know that when great businesses bring people in from out of state, that they're going to be welcome and know that they are wanted in our community. And again, a Medicaid expansion, there's some talk about that would put able-bodied people on health insurance. And I think it's critical to keep those able bodies able so they can contribute to our workforce.
Thank you. And Jane, what would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
I think, again, I would like to continue the quality education in our K through 12 programs And I'd also like to see our students encourage their graduating seniors to consider technical colleges. My husband has found with his business that the machinists are retiring and there aren't people to replace those positions. So I see that there's definitely a need there. And if we can encourage seniors to look at other colleges, technical community colleges versus a four-year college, that would be a great way to bring in some new businesses if we've got a workforce that's trained to meet some of those positions. And even with my son with his small business, he has a difficult time finding employees, and so that would help him too. So I would really like to focus on that, maybe come up with creative ways to help students that can't afford it so that they could afford to get the proper training so that they could be contributing citizens to our state.
Thank you. The next question, and Jane, you'll go first. What are your views on K-12 public education funding in Kansas?
Well, I think that was solved back with in 2019 that they came up with a plan that the Kansas State Supreme Court agreed on. And so my big focus right now that I'm very concerned about is what has happened with the virus, with the gap between the different communities. For instance, I heard on the radio this morning that in Kansas City, Kansas, they are not going to be going back to school until January, and even then it'll be a hybrid. So I'm very concerned about those children that don't do well with online learning, and just how are we going to manage that gap, especially the difference between those that have the means to pay for private education or something in this interim period that are getting their kids educated versus the other ones that where both parents are working and they don't have the time to be there with their kids when they're doing the online learning to monitor them, especially when it's your elementary age kids. That I'm just very concerned about that and just the mental issues that come with that. So that's kind of what my biggest concern with education in the coming years is.
Thank you. And Mari-Lynn, what are your views on K-12 public education funding in Kansas?
Well, as we know, we have finally constitutionally funded our schools after a 10-year, very expensive legal battle. And what we know is that the extremists on the far right continue to come after that. So I think a priority would be that we protect the constitutional amendment, that we adequately fund our public schools. It's the backbone of our society, and the main responsibility of the legislature is to adequately fund public schools. In the pandemic, we're seeing all the ways that our families have come to count on our schools, and we need to elect legislators who are committed to our public school system. They need us more now than ever, and this is no time to abandon our commitment to them. For many Kansans, their homes represent their largest assets, and our schools keep that portfolio strong. And all of our chambers of commerce assert that our world-class public schools are the main draw for bringing Kansas businesses here. I know that they drew me here. I'm the only candidate in this race to receive endorsements from all of the major public education advocacy groups across parents and teachers. And I want District 20 to know that I am your pro-public education candidate.
The next question, what types of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas? Mari-Lynn, we'll start with you.
Well, in Kansas, we had a complete lack of a comprehensive economic development strategy. The last one that was implemented was in 1986. And I think we saw the results of that. So I am very much on board with Governor Kelly's Kansas Framework for Growth, developed with the Commerce Secretary Tolan. And what we saw was an immediate success. Combined with the repeal of the Brownback tax experiment and the implementation of this plan, CNBC ranked us as the #1 comeback economy in 2019. We moved up 16 spots in the best places to do business. So I think that we need to keep a focus on that and put those policies into place.
And Jane, for you, what types of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
I think we need to come up with incentives that are available to all businesses, and we need to be careful about picking winners and losers. I saw that happen with the COVID crisis, how that were businesses, the big box businesses were able to stay open, where our mom and pop stores had to close. So I would think that if you want to make sure that once you come across with what needs to be done, that you allow the small businesses to do that with the same guidelines. So that would be one thing that I'd be concerned about. I also think we need to be competitive, and we've got other states so close to us here in Johnson County that we will need to be competitive with neighboring states with regards to tax policies, property tax costs, and business regulations.
And that leads right into our next question. What are your views on state tax policy, being as specific as you can? Jane, you're first.
Well, I see that, like I mentioned before, taxes are an increasing burden on our families and small business owners. I've found that as I've gone door to door, so many people are concerned about the rising property taxes and just being taxed out of their homes, especially for our seniors. So that's very important. I would like to at least see some transparency in property taxes so that people are aware in advance that their property taxes are going up, and that the people that are in charge of that would have to vote on that so that you would know what actually is going on. One of the other things that I would like to see, especially because we're so close to Missouri, I would like to see the lowering of sales tax on food.
Thank you. Mari-Lynn, what are your views on state tax policy, being as specific as you can?
Thank you, Molly. Kansas has historically relied on the three-legged stool to make sure that our taxes are balanced and fair. Those include income, sales, and property tax. We need to take a top to bottom look at that and make sure that they are fair and balanced. My opponent was on the record as saying that she wanted to follow the Kansas GOP platform, which would eliminate both corporate and individual income tax and wipe out a complete leg of that stool and turn our system on its head. I would not advocate for that. I would advocate that we do eliminate or lower our food sales tax. It's one of the most regressive tax systems in the country and affects our low and middle income families the most. We do need to allow families to itemize on their Kansas tax return, even if they don't on their federal. What we need is a clean bill on that, where we're not giving away corporate tax breaks as well as lowering that burden on our families. In terms of property taxes, those of course aren't set by the state. I also agree that we need transparency in that. I would, though, from a state level, say that we should look at a homestead exemption similar to what my parents had in Florida for seniors who are on a fixed income or a limited means. My opponent keeps saying that I want to raise taxes. You can see that that's not true. And twisting the truth about taxes does seem to be their campaign's MO, including my own, which were paid as soon as the state of Kansas agreed that they were demanding the wrong amount from us. As your representative, I'll fight to make sure that you don't pay more than your fair and correct taxes as well.
Thank you. The next question, Mari-Lynn, for you first. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
Well, healthcare is one of the #1 priorities that I ran on. My husband has MS, and I know how critical it is to have health insurance. As a small business owner, I do not have access to employer-sponsored health care, and neither does my husband because he's a contract employee. In terms of Medicaid expansion, it is a moral and economic imperative, and it's really nice when those two things can work together. We've sent over $4 billion in Kansas hard-earned taxpayer money out of states. We could reclaim over $500 million a year for our state economy and create approximately 13,000 jobs with Medicaid expansion. Uncovered individuals forego primary health care and end up in the emergency rooms, which are the most expensive form of health care, and it drives up costs for everyone. Uncompensated care has been closing our rural hospitals. We could cover 150,000 Kansans, our neighbors, maybe even more due to the pandemic job losses, including an estimated 7,400 veterans, which as a military brat is very near and dear to my heart. Healthcare is a #2 industry in House District 20, and our chambers all include Medicaid expansion in their legislative priorities. My concern with my opponent's reliance on a free market solution is that those Kansans who have low income and job losses and itinerant jobs, those are not the best people to make a business plan for and make money. She mentioned concierge care paid for by the state. That is not a healthcare policy, and increasing the HSA limit does not help our low income folks. So I would like to see greater access and Medicaid expansion.
Thank you. And Jane, what are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
Well, I think one of the first things we have to consider is how do we take care of those that currently qualify? There's already a waiting list, and so it concerns me that we add more people to the pool, but we're not adding more doctors. To me, that indicates then that we're rationing healthcare. And so I want those people that can't afford to buy their own health insurance, that they have the same options as the rest of us. So that's why I want to consider other things. As Mari-Lynn said, I've said in the past, a concierge program. I'd like to just look at other options, be creative about how we can work together. And I think the other thing that if the private and the public sector can work together to solve problems, I think we can come up with an even better solution than what currently is out there. So I'm very open to looking to other options so that everybody has choices in their health insurance.
Thank you. The next question, and Jane, you'll go first. What do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
Well, I think I've been a Republican all my life, and I support the Republican Party platform. So some of those differences between the Republican Party platform and the Democrat are that Republicans are for limited government, free enterprise, individual liberty, and the culture of life.
Thank you. Mari-Lynn, what do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
Well, I, from the beginning of my campaign, have tried to develop a cross-party coalition of centrists. I think that's where most people in District 20 live their lives, and as Americans do as well. And when you look at the political spectrum, I was a Republican for 35 years and have been a Democrat for 2. I'm less concerned about the party hat that I wear than the common sense middle ground solutions. And if you look at that, that puts me in the middle. And Jane answered her survey for the iVoter Guide saying that she was very conservative. And when she says that she wants to follow the party platform, I'm not sure that people know that that includes arming teachers. They know that it includes denying Medicaid expansion to 150,000 Kansans and eliminating our corporate structure, our corporate tax structure, income tax, and that would unbalance everything. So I am the cross-party candidate who will work with anybody who has common sense solutions for Kansas.
Thank you both. That's the end of the question and answers. We'll wrap up today's forum with closing statements, and Mari-Lynn, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you very much, the chambers who hosted this meeting today. I'm glad to get an opportunity to share my vision for and priorities for Kansas in general and for House 20 in particular. This is a very important election year, and House District 20 has very clear choice in front of them. My opponent, who's committed to the most extreme tenets of the Kansas GOP platform and reviving Brownback era policies, or myself, the high energy champion for District 20 values, the centrist candidate who's going to bring balance and bipartisanship to the legislature, who will work with and listen to both sides. One of the things that's at stake is our redistricting that will shape the political landscape for the next 10 years in Kansas. And if we hand the GOP an extremist supermajority, they have already stated publicly that they will draw district lines to their advantage and have Republican-controlled legislative districts from school board all the way up to our U.S. Congress. I think that Kansas voters need to look very carefully at that. And I'm asking for your trust and your vote today. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Jane, your turn for a closing statement.
Well, I want to thank all of my constituents that took the time to visit with me over the summer and this fall. It's been just so encouraging to talk to people and people that had different viewpoints than me, and just how we've been able to talk together and see if we could come up with some solutions that would work. As that's one of my main goals, is to talk to both sides, to consider all options, a solution that accommodates all Kansans. And so I cherish the opportunity to get to serve all Kansans, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd.
Thank you both. We certainly appreciate your time in coming today. That concludes today's forum for Kansas House District 20 featuring Jane Dirks and Mari-Lynn Poskin. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and remind you that today's forum has been recorded and will be posted on the Johnson County Public Policy website. That is votejoco.com. Advanced voting by mail began on October 14th and advanced voting in person on October 17th, with Election Day on November 3rd. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.